If you're an iOS developer, either you've dealt with the recruiter call at the start of your current job and the jobs before, or it's your first time around and you're thinking of what you need to prepare for the recruiter call. I've made this video kind of as a quick reminder of what can happen or an introduction about where these recruiter calls might go. Hope it's helpful. A classic recruiter call will ask you who you are and why you've applied for the position. And it actually depends on what type of company you've applied for as to how you answer. Because you might be speaking at a small company to a CTO and you can go into some technical detail, just briefly about some technology you've worked on, which might be matched to a job advert for this particular position. Or you might be speaking to an internal recruiter, in which case you want to just match your experience to the company while selling yourself a little bit to both the position and the company. An external recruiter, so a recruiter who's maybe working for a different company you've applied to, or one that's on retainer for the company you've applied for, really kind of wants you to tick box their requirements. So they might want, say, a Swift developer with 4 years experience, or someone who knows something about Swift UI. The steer for that should come from the job advert. So the trick is to match your skills and experience to the job which you've been presented with. And I always think it's really important to listen because the recruiter gives clues of what they're looking for. However, at the first stage, they might just say, "Who are you? Introduce yourself." And then you need to go in and display the key areas of competency, probably in about 30 seconds, I would say. Some of these recruiter interviews can feel like they're trying to sell the company to you rather than you to the company. But you shouldn't be tricked. Those really are clues that help you get through potentially this stage and subsequent stages. So I would recommend writing down those little clues the recruiter gives. For example, we have a greenfield project, or the project's been created by our current team who have so many members. It's all information you can refer to in later interviews, or if you can hold it and integrate it in your later answers, actually give great answers during the recruiter interview that show you've been listening and show how you fit into the team. Of course, it depends what information they give you. I think it's common to have recruiter interviews where it's almost a 5-10 minute chat of the recruiter thinking, "You need to sell yourself to me." And in that case, they might ask you about a specific project, which can actually be tricky because you might not want to go into too much technical detail if the person you're speaking to doesn't have a technical background. And this is where you can start to think about two-way dialogue and ask people how much information they need. If you're interviewing a small company and speaking to a CTO, you might be able to go into a great deal of detail, but you always need to keep it brief in the first call. Even these calls that last half an hour aren't expected to go into great technical detail. So it's a surface level trying to cover the bases of what the employer is looking for. And the best way to give an answer that covers what's being looked for is by listening. How you appear in interviews is always really important. And if you're dealing face-to-face with people, there's often social mirroring. So if someone's sitting up very straight, you can sit up straight too. If they're writing and you're writing, then psychologically it feels very good for the interviewer. It's always trickier on camera, but making eye contact is really important. And I don't know if this comes across on this video, but I'm looking directly at the camera now, which you can judge if that looks like eye contact or not. And one thing about interviewers is they love eye contact. And here's a tip for you. In meetings as well, making eye contact, it really helps and goes down well. So you should think about how you sit, how you appear, and also if you're looking at the person speaking to you. Behavioural questions can even come up at this first stage, where they might be looking for how you work in a team. And so they might ask for an example of when you've worked in a team and how that went, or how you deal with conflict. It's just really important that you come across well and come across cooperatively. Variations of this question include asking why you're leaving your current position, and you need to always remember to be positive and give a reasonable reason for leaving your current position, which might even be money. It might be go for a interesting product, or different team structure, or different company, or different size of company. All of those have advantages and disadvantages for picking, but you really need to think which apply best to the company you're going to. If you're applying for a company that really loves their culture and have values around their culture, saying, oh, I want to leave because I see that your culture is really interesting and you're really proud of it, shows you've researched the company and thought about why you want to leave your current company and also why you want to fit into the new company. And it can go down extremely well. You might well get asked about salary expectations. And part of this is to not waste people's time going through the process, but it's also the beginning of the negotiation. And at this point, I always find it difficult. I do a lot of research, look on Glassdoor how much the salary should be, and I do have an expectation from my current position. However, I also subscribe to the idea you should never jump first, you should never give a number first. And so, one way around this is to ask for the salary range from the recruiter. I have had an experience where the recruiter would refuse to give a salary range, and in that instance I did decide not to proceed with the interview, because obviously they know how much they can afford and how much they expect for the position, whereas you as an interviewee have a limited amount of information. And how can you place yourself in a company when you don't know what the bounds possibly are? It's a tricky thing, and in other interviews I've just said a number that I think is the right number to go with, and that has also been okay because I've felt I've done my research and know what I'm worth. It's really down to you to decide, but I would recommend before you go into the interview to understand what you would like and your strategy for achieving that before even the initial interviewer, even though it takes time to do that research. If you've been listening throughout the interview and making notes, hopefully you've got a few key things that the organisation seem to be looking for in a candidate. So when you're asked for questions, you can mirror that. So, for example, again, they might be very proud of their culture. You could ask further questions about the culture. So you can see, if you've researched the values of the company initially and confirmed that during the interview, then ask an extension question about that, you're fitting in to the company immediately. It might be that a company has a value of getting things done and very much delivery. You can then pick that up from the interview, and then you can ask questions about delivery. What support might you be given to deliver something? Or within this culture of delivery, is there also opportunity to extend yourself and learn new things? Do they pay for courses? Do they pay for online training? You're showing interest, and also with that last question, you'd be saying you're thinking of developing yourself in the future, which, depending on the company, depending on what's said, may or may not be a good thing. And I think your questions, you're revealing more about yourself, but you're also given this opportunity to sell yourself as well. And it's one you should be taking up. In terms of a first interview, I often think about it like a first date. It's getting to know you, but it's more than a first date on a dating app in that they have more than a picture of you. They have the picture of you from your resume. And kind of you've already succeeded being in that recruiter interview, and they want to push you through. Now, sometimes it cannot work, but that can be for the best, because going through many stages of an interview isn't the best thing when you have a bad feeling right at the beginning and the culture and the values don't fit yours. So you should never feel bad for, in inverted commas, failing a first interview. It should be a learning experience. It's your opportunity to sell yourself, but you can't easily sell yourself into an organization or a job where you just don't fit. This is about iOS development, but even a small change, a job which is a Android developer, for me would be extremely difficult fit, and actually I wouldn't want to do it, and in the interview we'd find out it's not the right thing. Sounds abstract, but I've had interviews that suddenly turn out to be a React Native interview, and for various reasons I would prefer not to code in React Native, and I don't really have the skills or experience to command the salary that I would like. So at that point I would usually say in the interview, thanks, but no thanks. And I think the interviewer appreciates that as well. But the point in this video is really for you as the candidate about listening and about fitting in with the culture, and while getting that information to really see if you want to go further. And with that information, you can really go further because you're learning about the organization at each stage of the interview. Anyway, hope this video has been of help, and you can always get in touch with me on Twitter, etc. So, bye.